Have you ever heard that expression about drinking where sober people will say, take the decision to quit drinking now, or otherwise one day the decision will be made for you by someone else? And I think the same thing applies to getting a reasonable haircut for both men and women, really, but primarily men. I think women are way more inclined to just accept what's happened with the role, their age and what's happening with them in terms of like thinning hair or grays or whatever. And they'll go with the flow because they want to kind of fit in a little bit more. I think the average dude, uh, of course, there are the men out there who've had the same haircut since they were like grade since they were in grade five. You know those guys where it's like you could look through the like this is your life story of their existence, and it's just it's they've never branched out. For some guys, it works. Like Dimitri Martin, he's got that kind of bowl cut, looks pretty cool. I think he's probably dying at this point. He's what is he in his 50s or something? But he's essentially like in the same category as like Paul McCartney or something, where it's like, yeah, you will be able to get away with that as long as it doesn't start falling out until you're like 70 or something, and then you could do like fucking the Paul McCartney trick where you just kind of make it blondie all of a sudden, and you kind of look like um Aunt Diane at the family get together all of a sudden. Super lesbo vibes, but better than just the kind of like out of nowhere fucking gray, you're fucking gray hair. That's quite shocking when that happens. One of the dudes from Black Rebel Motorcycle Club did that out of nowhere. Where he just one tour or one album cycle came back and it was just like same haircut but fucking gray, and it looked good. And like looking back, it made sense. It was like, oh yeah, for sure. He was just like putting fucking shoe polish in his hair for about a decade. Probably went really prematurely gray in his late 20s and just thought, no, I'm way too young now. I'll hold off, and probably reached his early 40s and thought, now's the time. But he didn't ease you in like fucking Paul McCartney did with the Aunt Diane blonde streak thing. He just went, fuck yeah, deal with that. I'm gray now. Which was a lot. It was a lot to handle. So let's this message about barreling towards a reasonable haircut is for the guys out there who've played around, who've fucked around with their hair. Um, when I was a younger man, I just went with the long hair because it kind of fit the kind of burnout, whatever, man, vibe. Also, just complete laziness where you get a haircut, it's relatively short, and then you can just be like, I'm just going to let it grow until it becomes unmanageable or annoying, and then I'll get another haircut. So you're basically on like two or three haircuts a year. It's you're saving the money. We're not fancy, but we're cheap. And you're also yeah, it's kind of ramshackle. You're like, whatever, man. I'm out there. But at a certain point, what I noticed is that it's either your body or your face begins to not really start matching the hair. You get older and you realize I've got my haircut belongs on someone 10 years younger than me. And it's maybe, I think there's two phases to it, right? Like one day you look yourself in the face, you're like, I've aged in the face. I'm 35 years old, but I still got a 25-year-old haircut. So that's phase one. You're like, should I get something a little bit more age appropriate? And you really, in my opinion, have to kind of go with that at that point. And it really does make you look back at your life um in terms of the decisions you made, especially in this era of kind of like looks maxing. On Reddit, there are now so many fucking ways for you to figure out what you're doing right and wrong. You can go down the full give me the fucking truth, man. Rate my look, rate my body route, which I think is a little intense. You want to kind of Peter Thiel this and not, you want to learn from other people's mistakes. And yeah, so on Reddit there's just so much advice. I think generally good advice about fashion and looks maxing. So you do kind of look back at your own trajectory, at least I do, and think, wow, my hair was doing a lot of heavy lifting. Like I put very little effort into figuring out how I looked. And for the longest time, it did kind of work for me to have the kind of ramshackle long hair, 2/3 haircuts a year. Um, Putting no real effort in because that kind of suited my vibe. But at a certain point, I don't know, you kind of need to pick your spots as well, where it's like you kind of, when you're younger, you expect people to be all over the place, and you're allowed to kind of wear like a band t-shirt, and you're allowed to have some piercings and, I don't know, spiky hair and Doc Martens on. You've got a lot of kind of like exclamation points all over your body, and it all kind of has a jambalaya effect of like, wow, this person's hip. They're out there. The older you get, the less tolerant you are of people with exclamation marks all over their body. Like, you're 35 years old. Can you turn it the fuck down, please? And so I think that is mainly the initial reason why, even if your hair's not falling out, you haven't gone gray like the BRMC guy. You just kind of like, you've aged out of your haircut. You can still kind of pull it off. It's not thinning or receding, but you've aged out, and it just becomes you become like, your hair precedes you at a certain point. And when you're younger, maybe that's what you need. You need that fucking confidence. But at a certain point, you need to get rid of that, because maybe you've got a nice pair of shoes on, and you kind of have to decide. You're like, it's the shoes or the hair. And the hair ain't going to last forever. Whereas you can always keep getting better pairs of shoes and, I don't know, working out more and figuring out how to buy clothes that fit your body good. So I think at a certain point, the hair has to go. Because if the hair doesn't go at that point, then you start hanging on, and it does become your personality. You are attached to it. You start imagining, you're like, well, how the fuck would I look? This has got to be something that AI has solved, right? Like when you go to the fucking barber and there's all those hunks in the book where it's like which haircut you want, and all these hunks look fucking amazing with the model haircuts, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna get the shitty one, like that meme, like the haircut we have at home. Yours looks like fucking dog shit. But there's got to be an AI thing where you can get like an honest appraisal of how your hair will look, or even just for baldies, right? Guys who are going to go bald, like just getting an honest appraisal of what they're going to look like if they buzz their hair. Because the guys, if they don't do it when they're like 35, 40, they hang on to their 50. I think at a certain point, they're like, well, fuck it. I don't care if I've got three, guys with long hair just becomes this like thinning mullet, and it becomes complicated. Whereas if you bite the bullet early, you're like, all right, I've got a reasonable haircut. I'm reasonable above the shoulders. Then yeah, I think you've got more to play with beneath the shoulders. Women are onto this. Women know that they're kind of like, they're more peer pressured by other women, and so they're going to be, occasionally you see a woman with like a wild hairstyle, and it's like, yeah, you are probably homeless. Whereas men, across all fucking fields, across all fucking classes, there'll be a strong proportion who are holding on to haircuts they can't manage. It's like it's like a fucking P-plater trying to drive a Ferrari. It's like, dude, you're not equipped for that. So anyway, and I think like one of the upsides here is that when you get the reasonable haircut, you can overcompensate in completely other ways and just become completely You know, a lot of dudes, when they hit middle age, they get the reasonable haircut and then they get insane, unreasonable political opinions. So above the shoulders, you think they're all right. They're like, oh, this guy's just got a short back and sides with some grays coming in at the side. He's kind of maturing. He looks handsome in a kind of old bulldoggy type of way. You're like, that's a normal dude. Inside his head, insane QAnon crazy shit. Because he's like, well, I used to have long hair. All that kind of wild energy has to go somewhere. So that's one upside. Or the guy where it's like, I don't know, you meet him at a barbecue or something. It's like, oh, there's just a straight laced 45-year-old dressed completely normally, and then like, I don't know, you'll bump into him at the bathroom and he'll pull out fucking lines out of his cargo shorts. Like, do you want to get fucking buzzed, man? Next minute you're shelving MDMA at a quinceanera because you met some fucking dude who you thought was completely straight laced and normal, but he's packing heat because the cop's never going to stop him. He's not some fucking burnout long hair from a Richard Linklater film. No, he's just he's fucking he's Richard. He's a chartered accountant. He's got lots of good reviews on Yelp and Google Maps. Of course, he wouldn't be dishing out pingers and fucking cocaine to randoms at quinceañeras. That's not his vibe, but it is his vibe because no one suspects him, and he's like a wolf in plain sight. So, yeah, these are my thoughts. I think it's going to be difficult. It is basically saying goodbye to your youth in a sense where it's like, all right. And to be clear, you don't have to go completely grade 5 haircut on this. You don't have to go like, I'm joining the military. Keep it a bit wacky. Give yourself a little bit of a fringe. I don't know. Experiment with some product. Fuck it. Go crazy. Like, get the reasonable haircut, but like, get out the peroxide or get some green stuff in there. Like, experiment for a little bit. But I think you'll quickly realize you're like, I need to get reasonable because there's other ways I can get more unreasonable. This is it's the pursuit of unreasonability. And you just kind of realize that if someone's going to be, even if someone's just going to be talking crazy shit to you, they're like, all right, this guy is fucking, he's got some wild things to say. You're more willing to accept it if he's got a plain black tee on. If he looks like he's a fucking roadie for AC/DC, you're like, all right, hit me with this sound technology stuff that can build Teslas. Like, tell me what tell me what you know about that, because like there's nothing else distracting about him. It's straight up and down the appearance, so the ideas can get wacky. So don't put it off. Long story short, if you're barreling towards a reasonable haircut, take the fucking plunge, baby. And then yeah, on the other side, you can keep being a fucking wackadoodle.